Should it be in here and here? Ah, this feels better. Okay.
Hello, and welcome back to Definitely Video Games. I'm NAFI Napkin, and you're watching a terrible attempt at a ripoff of a much better content creator. For the impatient among you, let's start off with an overreaching statement, or the bottom line. The Hanoi Tower puzzle is an all-encompassing simulacrum of temporal and spatial thought and planning. The Hanoi Tower puzzle is the biggest, the smallest, the longest, and the shortest game. The goal for the rest of this video is for me to persuade you, the viewer, to be in agreement with me with the statement just said. So keep this line in mind. Before I explain what I even mean, here's this personal anecdote on how I came across this puzzle and this revelation. The keywords here would be interconnectedness and, I don't know, coincidences. Now, I've been addicted to a few puzzle games before, mostly to blame on the Procrastinators podcast. Yes, this is a shameless promo. I love them. There was an era spanning a few weeks or months in the Procrastinators podcast lore where everyone just kept talking about Minesweeper. A voicemail came in with a guy who got really into Minesweeper.net or something. He ventilated exhaustively as he could in like less than a minute about this cool mobile game feel level gameplay of Minesweeper, getting addicted and such. Luckily for him, one of the co-hosts, Give and Take, had an affinity for puzzles, and his Minesweeper disease craze spread. This Give and Take character, who also real into Picross for a while, which got I, a humble viewer, try out an online version, and it's real fun. When I had access to my friend's Nintendo Switch, I wasted a gigabyte or more of his storage space just to get a demo or a trial version of Picross S4, which was the best Picross experience I've ever had, besides the mind-blowing revelation I had during the Hanoi Tower puzzle. What's so good about that version, and if you know anything about Picross, it basically tells you which column or lane to change something of automatically, something that I had an incredible trouble trying to do. I'd waste 90% of my time just staring at the screen in regular Picross, just searching which square to fill in out of this grid, seeing if filling it in here might affect this one, because I didn't know the patterns for high-level play. Grids bigger than 10 times 10. So it telling you where to focus on actually made it fun instead of a drag. Anyways, all of this to say that I like Picross and Minesweeper. The next chapter of this anecdote follows another thing I'd like to like, math. 3 blue 1 brown makes edutainmental maths videos on cool, interesting math topics, and sometimes he teaches calculus, which are really helpful. He does all this in the aesthetics of a black void where the only sentient creatures are phi creatures able to display the ideas of mathematical constructs, or that's my lore. It's pretty nice. So let's get to the point. I found his video on the Hanoi Tower puzzle where he introduces the concept of counting in binary and relating it to solving the Hanoi Tower puzzle. I'm not going to reiterate the ideas said in that video. I'll leave that to you if you want to watch it. I don't know, do what you want to do, man. But it gave me a feel for the Hanoi Tower puzzle's spatial density, its frequency of interacting with smaller parts twice as much as the one bigger than it, and twice more than the one under it. This isn't where it ends, though. The literal next day, I checked my classes for my university course on logic and discrete mathematics, and I can't believe what I saw. It was an introduction to algorithms, a set of instructions, on how to solve the Hanoi Tower puzzle. Our pre-assignment was to play this puzzle game to get a feel for it, then some chosen would present the most optimal moves for 3 to 4 rings. Am I living in a simulation where every aspect of my life is an informal entertainment and formal education intertwined? Am I living in an actual cohesive story where everything is related to each other? Am I the protagonist? Yes. So, To recap, I kinda just watched a YouTube video on the Hanoi Tower Puzzle, then in my uni course I was told to play the Hanoi Tower Puzzle game. Yep, that's it. This experience, however, brought me to realize the true beauty of this puzzle game from 1883, 138 years after it was introduced. This theme of interconnectedness not only appears in my anecdote of how I found the game, but also permeates through the gameplay of Hanoi Tower Puzzle, but this time it isn't a coincidence. So after coaxing you into listening my 700-word long first impressions, here's the straight dope after I explain what the game is. The Hanoi Tower Puzzle is a mathematical game consisting of 3 rods and discs of varying diameters which can slide into said rods. The beginning state of the game has all the discs inserted into the first rod, from biggest to small, bottom to top, in decreasing size. The objective is to transport this entire stack of discs onto the last rod following these rules. 1. Only one disc can be moved at a time. 2. Each move consists of taking the disc on top of a stack and placing it onto another stack or an empty rod. 3. No disc may be placed on top of a disc that is smaller than it. The Tower of Hanoi's level design is one of the best I've ever experienced. Its deceptively simplistic game design plays in its favor to masquerade the complexity and brain gymnastics expected to solve said puzzle. Its user interface is elegant and sleek without sacrificing form and function. Wow. This tower aesthetic is really getting to me. Now that we have defined how to play, let's get into the nitty-gritty. The following section will review the narrative. The story of the Hanoi Tower Puzzle is a beautifully woven story of logistics and oppression. It tackles troubling topics society faces with so much subtlety that it's basically non-existent. You, the player, is forced upon these incredibly strict rules, on yourself by the way. The Hanoi Tower Puzzle doesn't come with handcuffs and tasers for when you put a bigger disc on a smaller disc. To disobey the rules of the Hanoi Tower Puzzle, the consequences would be, you're not playing the Hanoi Tower Puzzle anymore. Change any of these rules and it becomes something else. Instead, self-restraint and abstinence is taught to the player, while also giving the limited enough controls for you to achieve an arbitrary goal. For what purpose should I move all these discs to another rod, following eccentric, vacuous rules, and why are these rods in this position in the first place? The answer to that is human ingenuity. To make a point. What is that point? I don't know, ask a mathematician or something. Post-production Napkin here. I don't discuss the point or the purpose of the Hanoi Tower Puzzle because frankly that is beyond the scope of this review. I don't try to explain the iterative or recursive mathematical solutions or anything. However, you will see in the next segment what this video is about, so stay tuned. Thanks. That was way more than I expected to write for quote-unquote a game with no narrative about its narrative. Let's get to the real main point. The gameplay of Hanoi Tower Puzzle is one of patience, repetition, thinking ahead, and interconnectedness. To demonstrate what I mean, I believe the best way to do so is to show you not only the gameplay, but it is imperative, because this is a puzzle game, show you the thought process of a general Hanoi Tower Puzzle game. A side note, while I did get an introduction knowing how to solve the Hanoi Tower Puzzle from 2 different sources, my university lecturer and my real teacher, 3 Blue 1 Brown, I used neither of these solutions. With that out of the way, let's discuss the Hanoi Tower Puzzle's game loop. You start off with a tower of discs on the first rod with the objective of moving all those discs onto another side. If you were to follow the rules of the game, the first step would be to move the top smallest disc to another stack or an empty rod. Because there hasn't been any stacks yet, move the smallest disc to an empty rod. Unknowingly, this decision of which empty rod chosen has just planted a seed, sprouting numerous bad decisions down the line, which will be a reoccurring theme. Well, possible bad decisions. From this point, there are two possible disks to move, the smallest disk again, and the second smallest disk. For simplicity's sake, I'm calling the numbering of the disks from smallest to biggest, so disk 1 is smallest, disk 2 is second smallest, and so on. If disk 1 were to move again, that wouldn't make any progress, as any move done by disk 1 would have already been able to do from move 1. So disk 2 has to be moved. But where? According to the rules, only one move is possible, which is the empty rod, not occupied by a smaller disk. Now, this is the state the board is in now. Every rod occupied with nowhere for disk 3 to land upon. This will prompt you to move disk 1 onto disk 2 for disk 3 to be moved somewhere. Now, if you want disk 4 to be moved somewhere, you realize it can't be the same rod disk 3 is on, so you start transporting and finagling with disk 1 and 2 using legal moves, stacked on top of disk 3. Copying the directive from disk 1 and 2, now you copy the directive, or steps, involved to move disk 3 onto disk 4. Hopefully from the progress that has just transpired, the game loop should be explanatorily sufficient. The idea is so that a bigger disk could be transported, all the disks smaller than it has to be stacked on another rod for that bigger disk to rest on an empty rod, and for the disk that's bigger than that, transport every smaller disk and create a stack or a tower on the other rod so the bigger disk could be on the empty rod. The set of instructions I have listed encapsulates the simplistic beauty surrounding the incredible complexity the Hanoi Tower puzzle conveys. With that, let's get to the main point, or the real straight dope. Because you might be thinking I just took a huge dope of weed while I played this, while I assure you my conscience is clear. I say that as my conscience is unclear. Bingo! The Hanoi Tower puzzle is an all-encompassing simulacrum of temporal and spatial thought and planning. Let's tackle this piece by piece. The Hanoi Tower puzzle is able to represent the ideas of temporal and spatial planning. First of all, temporally, you have to think ahead. The position and choice of which rod you want to place a disc upon will impact every decision you make after that choice, and the choice you have just made has been impacted by every decision you have just made before it. From the very first disc, which empty rod you chose to put it on, the next disc will have to occupy the other empty rod, then move the first disc on top of the second disc, so the third disc is on the new empty rod, and repeat. When you have just made a stack so a disc from the original tower could move to the empty rod, the smallest disc will have to make the biggest decision it has made until the next stack. An improper placement will affect every single other placement down the line. Second, spatially. You have to think how even the smallest piece can affect the biggest piece. Because of the Hanoi Tower's puzzle's strict rules, meaning only a smaller disc may be stacked on top of a bigger disc, on top of the rule of only being able to move a disc with no discs. God damn it! On top of the rule of only being able to move a disc with no discs on top of it, this means it was by design the most frequent disc meant to be moved is the smallest disc. This makes moving the biggest disc feel incredibly impactful when comparing the frequency of disc movement. Moving the biggest disc feels like a special and rare event because it is. You know that after moving that big disc, you will have to transport every single smaller disc above it before being able to move it again. The fact the Hanoi Tower puzzle is able to impose such an emotion that I felt from just moving discs is a statement to itself. Third, interconnectedness. The aspects mentioned above coalesce and interact in a beautiful manner. The plan to move a big disc involves both planning to move every disc above, which takes numerous moves of forethinking and consideration of the position of every smaller cog underneath or above it, mixing both temporal thinking ahead and spatial how small discs affect big discs. Every move starts a domino effect, rippling and permeating through everything that will happen until you reach that objective. From the micro to the macro, from the beginning to the end, the Hanoi Tower puzzle is the space-time continuum. It just is. I don't know how many times I have to repeat myself, but the Hanoi Tower puzzle is a game of interconnectedness with every part seamlessly meshing together. I still don't know if I convinced you that the Hanoi Tower puzzle is an all-encompassing simulacrum of temporal and spatial thought and planning. Maybe play a couple of games yourself to see what I mean. So that was why the Hanoi Tower puzzle is the best video game of all time. But why did I make a video about why the Hanoi Tower puzzle was the best game of all time? The point of this video was to first rip off Tim Rogers. I love this man. He comes off very intelligent sounding, like showing off. He talks about himself a lot while reviewing a video game, but I just love him. His style is great. A lot of people look up to him for his work ethic, which can be seen in this video. You'll see what I mean like 45 minutes in or so. And he's just funny and genuinely entertaining. I can explain in many more words about Tim Rogers than just funny and entertaining, but let's just leave it at that. Sadly, I can't keep up with him making like a completely out of there metaphor every 3 sentences. I unironically quote his dive kick advertisement video on the daily. It's amazing. Second reason, if I wanted to take myself seriously, or anyone to take me seriously, I realized I need to analyze something without any preconceived strings or general assumptions like obvious criteria for video games. Level design, character and narrative, visual graphics and audio. I found these to be all kinda hard to analyze and take in all at once. So here's a simple but weirdly space-time continuum encompassing review on the Hanoi Tower puzzle. If I can't explain why the Hanoi Tower puzzle is a good game, then how do I expect myself to analyze anything like a generic video games and, I don't know, Minecraft? 3. There is genuinely something philosophically deep about this game, and I've been having trouble to describe and put into word. That has just been the attempt I pulled off in this video. Oh my god, it's been 2 hours of just writing this dumb script on something no one cares about. Not to mention countless days and sleepless nights of editing. But seriously, thanks for being patient and watching something you probably had no interest in the first place. I think I'm just gonna end it, so we hold these truths to be self-evident, that I was born stupid, however, I will not die hungry. Video games forever. NAFI Napkin. Bye.